Ever had someone try to steal your airplane seat with the confidence of a toddler claiming ownership of the entire playground? Smash that like button if you've ever met a Karen at 30,000 feet, and drop a comment telling me the most ridiculous demand a stranger has ever made of you, because trust me, this one's going to make your stories look like polite suggestions. So there I was, dragging my sorry carcass through Terminal B at 5:47 a.m., clutching my boarding pass like it was the last coffee on earth. Flight 447 to Denver, window seat 12A, paid for with my own hard-earned money and booked 3 weeks in advance because I'm one of those responsible adults who actually plans ahead. Revolutionary concept, I know. The flight was packed tighter than a sardine convention, and I'd specifically chosen this window seat because, frankly, after the week I'd had, I deserved to stare at clouds and pretend the world below didn't exist for a few hours. My grandmother had just passed, and I was flying out to help settle her estate. Not exactly a vacation, but hey, at least the view would be nice. The boarding process was like watching natural selection in action, and then I saw her. You know the type, perfectly coiffed blonde hair that probably cost more than my monthly rent, designer handbag clutched like a weapon, and that special brand of entitled posture that screams, I've never heard the word no, and don't plan to start today. I already guessed where this was going. Karen, because of course her name was Karen, had somehow managed to position herself right behind me in line, probably calculating that proximity would give her a better shot at my seat. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head. You know, she said, tapping my shoulder with one manicured nail. I've been thinking about our seating situation. Our seating situation. Like we were co-pilots planning a mission to Mars. Have you now? I replied, not turning around. The gate agent was scanning boarding passes with the enthusiasm of someone counting grains of sand, so we had time for Karen's performance. I really do think there's been some kind of mistake with the system, she continued, her voice taking on that sing-song quality people use when they're about to ask you to donate a kidney. I mean, I always get window seats. It's practically written in stone. I finally turned to face her. She was clutching her phone like it contained the secrets of the universe, probably ready to show me screenshots of every window seat she'd ever booked since the Wright brothers took flight. That's fascinating, I said. I also always get window seats. It's almost like we both paid for them or something. Her smile flickered like a dying light bulb. Well, yes, but I have a medical condition. Ah, the medical condition card. Right on schedule. I wondered if her condition was chronic entitlement or acute main character syndrome. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, channeling my inner customer service representative. What condition requires specifically my window seat instead of, say, any of the other window seats on this plane? She blinked rapidly, like a computer trying to process an unexpected error. I get claustrophobic in aisle seats. That's terrible, I nodded sympathetically. Good thing you have a window seat then. 14F, wasn't it? The line moved forward, and I could see the gate agent's tired eyes scanning boarding passes with the mechanical precision of someone who'd dealt with 1,000 Karens before lunch. Karen, however, wasn't done with her performance. But my window seat is over the wing, she whined, her voice climbing an octave. You can't see anything over the wing. It's like being trapped in a metal tube with no view. Technically, we're all trapped in a metal tube, I pointed out. That's kind of how planes work. She huffed like I'd just explained quantum physics to a golden retriever. You're being deliberately obtuse. Obtuse. Someone had been reading her word of the day calendar. The family ahead of us, Mom, Dad, and 2 kids who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, kept glancing back at our conversation. The dad caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up. Even strangers could sense the cosmic injustice Karen was attempting to perpetrate. Look, Karen said, switching tactics like a politician during election season. I'll make it worth your while. She reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a $20 bill, waving it like she was bidding at an auction for my dignity. $20. For a window seat I'd paid extra for on a 5-hour flight, so she could take Instagram photos of clouds. Wow, I said, staring at the bill. $20 whole. Let me just calculate the exchange rate on my self-respect. Carry the one. Multiply by the audacity factor. Yeah, that's still a no. Her face flushed red, clashing spectacularly with her orange spray tan. Fine. $40. The gate agent called for group 2, my group. I stepped forward, but Karen grabbed my arm with the desperation of someone who just realized their master plan was crumbling. Wait, I'll give you $100. The entire boarding area went quiet. Even the crying baby stopped mid-wail to witness this spectacular display of entitlement. $100. She was offering me $100 for a seat she could have booked herself if she'd planned ahead like a functioning adult. Ma'am, the gate agent called out. Please keep the line moving. I gently extracted my arm from Karen's death grip. Thanks for the offer, but I'm good. Enjoy 14F. I hear the wing views are character building. As I handed my boarding pass to the gate agent, I could hear Karen behind me, her voice rising to frequencies that probably interfered with air traffic control. This is discrimination. I'm calling corporate. I'm never flying this airline again. The gate agent, bless her tired soul, looked at Karen's boarding pass and said in the most deadpan voice imaginable, Ma'am, you're in group 4. Please wait your turn. I walked down the jetway with Karen's indignant sputtering echoing behind me, wondering if the flight attendants had been warned about the incoming storm. Something told me this was just the opening act of Karen's one-woman show, and I had a front row seat, literally, for whatever came next. The plane awaited, and with it, 5 hours of whatever fresh hell Karen's creative mind could conjure up. I shuffled down the narrow aisle, dodging elbows and oversized carry-ons, when I again spotted her. She was standing right next to my row, tapping her manicured nails against the overhead bin with the rhythm of impending doom. Excuse me, I said politely, gesturing to my seat. That's my spot. She turned to look at me with the kind of expression usually reserved for discovering gum on your shoe. Her eyes, cold blue and sharper than her cheekbones, swept over me from head to toe, clearly finding me lacking in whatever arbitrary standards she'd set for worthy airplane companions. Actually, she said, her voice dripping with the kind of fake sweetness that makes your teeth ache, I need this seat more than you do. I blinked. Twice. Because surely I'd misheard her. I'm sorry, what? I said I need this seat. She gestured vaguely at the window, like she was presenting evidence in court. I have anxiety about flying, and I absolutely must have a window seat to feel calm. You look young and healthy. You can sit anywhere. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. It was like watching someone walk into a restaurant, point at your meal, and declare they were hungrier than you so obviously they deserved your dinner. I glanced at her boarding pass, which she was waving around like a flag of surrender. Seat 14F. Ma'am, I said, keeping my voice level because my grandmother raised me with manners. Even when dealing with people who clearly had none, this is my assigned seat. I paid for it, and I have the boarding pass to prove it. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up so fast I worried they might achieve orbit. Are you seriously going to be difficult about this? It's just a seat. Just a seat. Right. The same way the Mona Lisa is just a painting, or the Grand Canyon is just a hole in the ground. I felt that familiar tingle in my chest, the one that shows up right before I'm about to deliver what my friends call aggressive customer service. You're absolutely right, I said, sliding past her to claim my rightfully purchased piece of airplane real estate. It is just a seat. Your seat is right there. I pointed to 14F with a smile so sweet it could have caused diabetes. She huffed like an indignant dragon and plopped down in her seat, immediately claiming both armrests like she was planting flags on conquered territory. The passenger in 14D, as it turned out, Karen's husband, who looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else, shot me a sympathetic look that said, "Good luck, soldier." As the plane prepared for takeoff, I thought the drama was over. Sweet, naive me. I had no idea that Karen was just getting warmed up. The real show was about to begin, and I had a front row seat to what would become the most entertaining flight of my life. The engines hummed to life, and I settled back to enjoy my hard-won window view. Little did I know, Karen was already plotting her next move with the strategic mind of a chess grandmaster. If chess grandmasters were petty, entitled, and completely divorced from reality. By the time we reached cruising altitude, I thought the entertainment was over. How wonderfully naive of me. Karen had spent the first hour of the flight doing what I can only describe as aggressive existing. She'd slammed her tray table up and down approximately 17 times, each slam punctuated by a dramatic sigh that could have powered a small wind farm. She'd also discovered that her seat didn't recline as far as she'd like, which was apparently a personal attack orchestrated by Boeing themselves. "This is unacceptable," she announced to nobody in particular, loud enough for half the cabin to hear. I specifically requested a seat that reclines properly. The flight attendant, Sarah, approached with the patience of a saint and the smile of someone who'd clearly dealt with worse. "Ma'am, all seats in this section have the same recline function. Is there something specific I can help you with?" Karen's eyes lit up like she'd just spotted a manager to speak to. "Yes, actually. That man," she pointed directly at me like I was evidence in a murder trial, "is in my seat. I've been trying to resolve this issue, but she's being completely unreasonable." I looked up from my book, a delightfully ironic choice about conflict resolution, and gave Sarah my most innocent smile. "I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion. This is definitely my assigned seat." "Show her your boarding pass," Karen demanded, as if she were conducting a congressional hearing. I pulled out my boarding pass with the theatrical flair of a magician revealing the winning card. "Seat 12A, window seat. Just as I booked it 3 weeks ago." Sarah examined my pass, then looked at Karen expectantly. "And your boarding pass, ma'am?" Karen's face went through more color changes than a mood ring in a hot tub. She fumbled through her oversized purse, the kind that could smuggle a small country, and produced her boarding pass with all the confidence of someone holding a losing lottery ticket. 14F, Sarah read aloud, her professional smile never wavering. "That your seat, ma'am." The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a plastic airline fork. Karen stared at her boarding pass like it had personally betrayed her, then looked at me, then back at the pass. I watched this mental ping-pong match while sipping my complimentary tomato juice, which suddenly tasted like victory. But I specifically requested a window seat," Karen stammered, her voice cracking like a teenager asking someone to prom. "I understand your disappointment," Sarah said, still maintaining that superhuman customer service composure. "But seat assignments are based on availability and when the booking was made. Is there anything else I can help you with?" Karen's face was now approaching the color of my tomato juice. "This is ridiculous. I fly all the time. I have status with airlines. I shouldn't have to sit in that seat like some peasant." I offered helpfully, not looking up from my book. The death glare she shot me could have melted the wing off the plane. "I wasn't talking to you." "No, but you were talking about me, so I thought I'd join the conversation. Community participation and all that." A few passengers around us were starting to take notice. The businessman in 11C had lowered his newspaper, and the elderly couple across the aisle were watching with the keen interest of people who'd stumbled upon quality-free entertainment. Karen turned back to Sarah with renewed determination. "I want to speak to whoever's in charge of this flight." "That would be the captain, ma'am, but he's currently flying the plane. I'm the senior flight attendant for this cabin, so I'm happy to help resolve any issues." "Then resolve this," Karen said, gesturing wildly between me and the window. "I need that window seat. I get claustrophobic in that seats. It's a medical condition. I couldn't help myself. Funny how that medical condition didn't prevent you from booking that seat." "I didn't book that seat," she snapped. "My travel agent must have made a mistake." "Ah, yes," I nodded sagely. "The mysterious travel agent. They're always making these convenient mistakes, aren't they? Like booking people into seats they didn't want, or forgetting to mention that other people might also want to sit down." The businessman in 11C actually snorted with laughter, which he tried to cover with a cough. Karen noticed, and her face somehow managed to achieve an even deeper shade of red. Sarah, bless her professional soul, tried to mediate. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but all passengers have a right to their assigned seats. If you'd like to request a seat change, I can check if there are any available window seats in other sections." "I shouldn't have to move sections." Karen's voice was rising to levels that probably violated several noise ordinances. She should just move over one seat. It's not that big of a deal. I finally closed my book and gave her my full attention. You're absolutely right, Karen. It's not that big of a deal. So why don't you just sit in your assigned seat and enjoy the flight? Because I specifically need the window seat. For your medical condition? Yes. The claustrophobia? Exactly. I nodded thoughtfully. The same claustrophobia that somehow allows you to fly in a metal tube at an altitude of 30,000 feet, but does not allow you to sit in a seat that is not by the window. The elderly woman across the aisle whispered something to her husband, and he chuckled. Karen noticed this too, and I could practically see the steam coming out of her ears. You don't understand, she said through gritted teeth. I have anxiety. I need to be able to see outside. Have you tried closing your eyes? I suggested helpfully. I hear that's a popular anxiety management technique. Very cost-effective too. Sarah stepped in before Karen could respond, which was probably wise given the way Karen was gripping her purse strap. Ma'am, I can offer you a complimentary drink for the inconvenience, and I'll check if any window seats become available during the flight. Karen stared at Sarah like she'd just offered her a handful of pebbles instead of customer service. A drink? I don't want a drink. I want that seat. She pointed at me again, and I gave her a little wave. Still here, still in my assigned seat, still enjoying the view. The tension in the cabin was reaching levels that could probably be measured by scientific instruments. Other passengers were starting to turn around, some with annoyance, others with barely concealed amusement. The flight attendants were beginning to exchange those subtle looks that service industry workers use when they're collectively thinking, oh, it's going to be one of those flights. And somewhere around 30,000 feet, with Karen still glaring at me like I'd personally canceled Christmas, I realized this was far from over. The real show was just getting started. The flight attendant returned with backup, a supervisor who looked like she'd dealt with enough entitled passengers to write a PhD thesis on the subject. Karen's face lit up like she'd just spotted her personal cavalry arriving. Finally, someone with authority, Karen announced, practically bouncing in her 14F seat. This man is being completely unreasonable about a simple seat swap. The supervisor, her name tag read Michelle, had that perfectly neutral expression that flight crew masters after years of dealing with human disasters. She glanced at my boarding pass, then at Karen's, then back at Karen with the kind of look you'd give someone who just claimed the moon was made of cheese. Ma'am, I can see that your boarding pass shows 14F. Could you help me understand the situation? Karen's smugness reached nuclear levels. Well, obviously there was a mistake with the booking system. I specifically requested a window seat when I booked, and this gentleman clearly doesn't need it as much as I do. I'm sure we can work something out that's fair for everyone. I had to admire her commitment to the delusion. It was like watching someone insist that gravity was optional while standing on a cliff. Actually, I interjected, pulling out my phone. I can clear this up pretty quickly. I showed Michelle my booking confirmation. I booked this seat 3 weeks ago. Premium economy, window seat, specifically chosen because I had a long day of meetings and wanted to sleep during the flight. Michelle nodded professionally. And ma'am, when did you book your ticket? Karen's confidence flickered for just a moment. Well, it was recent, but that's not the point. The point is that I have a medical condition that requires me to have a window seat. Again the medical condition card. Classic Karen move number 47 in the playbook. What medical condition would that be? Michelle asked, her tone still perfectly neutral, but with just a hint of I've heard this song before. I get claustrophobic. It's very serious. I couldn't help myself. Funny how that claustrophobia didn't kick in when you were perfectly happy in your seat until you saw mine was available. Karen shot me a look that could have melted steel. I was trying to be polite and not make a scene, but clearly some people don't understand basic courtesy. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a plastic spoon and serve it as dessert. Michelle turned to me. Sir, would you be willing to consider switching seats? We do try to accommodate passengers with medical needs when possible. Before I could answer, Karen jumped in. See? I knew you'd understand. Some people are just naturally more considerate than others. She actually patted the armrest like she was claiming territory. I looked at Michelle, then at Karen, then back at Michelle. You know what? I'd be happy to help accommodate a genuine medical need. But I need to see some documentation of this claustrophobia condition. You know, just to make sure we're following proper procedures. Karen's face went through about 6 different shades of red. I don't carry my medical records with me. What kind of person travels with their medical records? The kind who uses medical conditions to steal other people's seats, I said with a smile that was probably too cheerful for the situation. Michelle's professional mask slipped just enough to show a tiny smirk. Ma'am, if you have a documented medical condition that requires specific seating, the airline does need to verify that before we can ask other passengers to accommodate it. This is ridiculous. Karen's voice was climbing octaves like a soprano warming up for opera. I shouldn't have to prove that I'm claustrophobic. It's discrimination. The passengers around us were no longer pretending not to watch. This was better entertainment than whatever movie they'd loaded onto the seatback screens. I saw phones coming out. Apparently Karen was about to become internet famous. Ma'am, Michelle said, her patience wearing thinner than airline coffee. I'm going to need you to return to your assigned seat so we can complete boarding. If you'd like to speak with customer service about upgrading your seat for medical reasons, you can do that after we land. Karen's smugness evaporated faster than spilled water on hot pavement. You can't make me move. I'm a platinum member. I fly with this airline all the time. And yet somehow you still don't understand how seat assignments work. I muttered, just loud enough for the entertainment value. That's when Karen made her fatal mistake. She decided to double down instead of cutting her losses. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, I'll be filing complaints with everyone. The airline, the Better Business Bureau, social media. You'll be hearing from my lawyer about this discrimination. Michelle's expression shifted from professional patience to game over. Ma'am, calm down immediately, or I'll have to call security. The cabin went dead silent. Even the crying baby in row 8 seemed to pause to see what would happen next. Karen looked around at all the faces staring at her, probably expecting to see support for her righteous cause. Instead, she saw a sea of eye rolls, head shakes, and barely contained laughter. That's when I knew she was about to make this situation infinitely worse for herself. The aftermath was even sweeter than the main event. As we taxied to the gate, Karen sat in complete silence, occasionally shooting me death glares that could have powered the plane's engines. Her husband kept apologizing to everyone within earshot, which was basically the entire cabin since Karen had made sure we all knew each other intimately. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom one final time. We've reached our gate. Thank you for flying with us today. And remember, assigned seating exists for a reason. I swear I heard him chuckling. Even the pilots were having fun with this. As we prepared to disembark, Karen made one last desperate play. She stood up abruptly, blocking the aisle, and announced to the entire plane, I want everyone to know that this person, she pointed at me like I was a war criminal, refused to show basic human decency to a fellow passenger. The collective eye roll from 150 passengers was audible. Someone from the back shouted, Lady, we all saw what happened. Another voice chimed in. Yeah, you tried to steal his seat. The flight attendant who'd become my unofficial wingman stepped forward with that customer service smile that could cut glass. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to move along so other passengers can exit, she said sweetly. And just so you know, your behavior today will be included in our flight report. Have a wonderful day. Karen's face went through more color changes than a mood ring in a tornado. She grabbed her oversized carry-on and stormed off the plane, muttering something about lawsuits and corporate complaints. Her husband trailed behind, looking like he was considering changing his name and moving to another continent. As I gathered my things, passengers kept coming up to me. The businessman from across the aisle shook my hand. That was beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. The elderly woman who'd witnessed the whole thing patted my arm. Honey, you handled that better than a diplomat. Even the kid from a few rows back gave me a thumbs up. The flight attendant handed me a small card as I left. Complimentary drink voucher for your next flight, she said with a wink. And between you and me, That was the most entertaining flight I've worked in 10 years. I walked through the airport with a spring in my step, pulling up my phone to check messages. 3 missed calls from my buddy Jake, probably wondering if I'd made it. I called him back. Dude, you're not going to believe what just happened on my flight. I started. Let me guess. Delayed, terrible food, crying baby? Nope. Karen tried to commandeer my window seat, and I turned it into performance art. Please tell me you got video. Better. I got an entire plane full of witnesses and a flight crew that's probably going to tell this story for years. As I headed to baggage claim, I spotted Karen and her husband at the customer service desk. She was gesticulating wildly, while the poor representative looked like they were contemplating early retirement. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see the rep occasionally glancing around like they were looking for backup. I decided to take the scenic route past their drama. As I walked by, I heard Karen demanding to speak to someone's manager about the assault on her character that had occurred during the flight. The customer service rep was nodding politely while clearly thinking about their lunch break. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration," the rep was saying, "but if you'd like to file a formal complaint about another passenger, you'll need to contact our corporate office. However, I should mention that we also received a report about disruptive behavior during the flight." Karen's voice hit a pitch that could shatter wine glasses. Disruptive? I was the victim here. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered her trying to physically intimidate me into giving up my seat, and the feeling passed like a kidney stone, painfully, but completely. My luggage appeared on the carousel, and as I grabbed it, I took one last look at the customer service desk. Karen was now demanding to see security footage, apparently convinced that video evidence would vindicate her. Her husband was standing slightly apart, scrolling through his phone like he was researching witness protection programs. Walking toward the exit, I reflected on the whole experience. 6 hours ago, I'd been dreading a long flight. Now I had a story that would entertain friends for years and a renewed faith in the fact that sometimes, just sometimes, entitled people actually face consequences for their behavior. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was from the businessman who'd sat across from me. "Hey, got your number from the flight manifest request form we all filled out as witnesses. Just wanted to say thanks for the entertainment and let you know, if Karen actually tries to sue you, I've got your back." That was self-defense against weaponized entitlement. I laughed out loud in the middle of the terminal. A few people looked at me strangely, but I didn't care. I'd just survived a Karen encounter at 30,000 feet and lived to tell the tale. As I walked out into the sunshine, I couldn't help but smile. Karen had boarded that plane thinking she could bulldoze her way into my seat through sheer force of entitlement. Instead, she'd gotten a masterclass in why assigned seating exists and a front row seat to her own public humiliation. The best part? She'd paid full price for the ticket to her own downfall. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Today, it was flying first class. If you've ever wanted to see a Karen crash and burn at cruising altitude, hit that like button. And drop a comment if you've ever had to defend your airplane seat from entitled passengers. I'll read every single one while enjoying my complimentary drink voucher. Thank you for being with us, and see you next time.